So hello, everyone. Welcome to Lebeg's webinar called How to Run Facebook Ads in 2022. My name is Tony Perko, and today I am going to be your host. I am the head of customer success here at Lebeg, and at Lebeg, we are a data science and digital marketing company that's focused on helping businesses improve their ROI by using the best possible practices in their Facebook and Google ads. Some of you are joining us for several times now because this is our fourth webinar, the first one in this year. And I would say that we are a couple weeks late because we do have some good advice for you today on how you can maximize your results and lower your CPM basically on Facebook in 2022, and what we think that businesses should be doing at the beginning of the year now that the CPMs are the lowest, and how you can approach your ad strategies to really get the best possible results in this new year. People are still joining. I am admitting them from the waiting room. So let's just move on and let me tell you more about what we're going to be talking about today. So we've structured this webinar in three different parts. In part one, we are going to be focusing on CPM and how to approach CPM now at the beginning of the year. In part two, we are going to be talking about how you can improve your click-through rates and what we found and what works for us the best when we are trying to tackle the problem of a lower click-through rate in our ads. And in part three, we are going to have a couple of additional suggestions, and one particularly interesting one, which is related to a topic that we've seen is happening in the last 7 days in over 500 Facebook ad accounts, and that is really hurting the performance of a lot of the businesses that we are working with. So without further ado, let's get on to part one, which is going to be focused on ad price, that is CPM. So what we've found is in how you can lower your CPM, and what you should be focused on is auction competition. So now that it's Q1, this really we found is the best possible time to advertise for businesses that are non-seasonal brands. And as I've mentioned, we're working with over 500 Shopify businesses, which I'm guessing that most of you that are participating in this webinar are. And we've analyzed the data for over 500 Shopify businesses, and we were focusing mostly on CPM because every single year in Facebook advertising, we see a seasonal drop in CPM. And CPM is your price of advertising. So the price is the cost per mil. So how much it costs you to show your ad 1,000 times to people that you are targeting. And we've run an analysis and seen that in November and December, the CPM is the highest, which really is expected because a lot of seasonal businesses are spending most of their advertising budgets in Q4, and they're doing a lot of sales. So the competition in the market really is high. Usually the click-through rates are also high, and the conversion rates are sort of the highest in November and December. But what we've noticed this January is that CPM, and that this really happened on January 1st, the CPM went down by some 30%. So compared to December and January, the CPM was 30% lower, and the click-through rates remained stable while the conversion rate dropped by some 10%. But this can all be offset by a much lower CPM. And what we're forecasting for February is that the CPM is going to be a bit higher, but still it is going to be much lower than it is in Q4. So if you are a non-seasonal brand and you are focused on Facebook ads, you want to give some new creatives a try, you want to try out some new copy, this is the best possible time to test out your ad strategies and really get your best performers settled and find out what your best performers are before the price of advertising starts rising again in 2022. I'm sorry. So to kind of highlight this, the ad price in Q1 is 30% lower, but the click-through rate and conversion rate should pretty much remain the same according to our forecasts and what our data science team has ran on the data that we have. So you should really be expecting a 30% higher ROAS in January, February, March, and even April. So really, these are the best times to run your ads if you are a non-seasonal business. What we are expecting to happen, and as you can see on this graph, which our data science team has created for me, is that the ad price is going to start rising again somewhere around Mother's Day. So sometimes around mid-April, you can expect the CPMs to start going up. And this is going to culminate again with Black Friday and Cyber Monday and Christmas time. So the holiday season is going to have the highest possible CPMs. So now is the time to spend as much budget as you can while your results are good. The second thing that I wanted to talk to you about today is how CPM is going to be behaving compared to different variables. So where you should be putting most of your budget and how you should be allocating your ad placements, and in which countries as well. So some of you are probably operating worldwide. Some of you are only working locally, but we've calculated the average CPM prices by different placements and also by different countries, which I am going to be showing you today. Overall, Facebook as a platform is around 25% more expensive than Instagram is. And if you've been watching if you've been following the Facebook earning reports, and if you've been following the daily active number of Facebook users, this is kind of to be expected because Facebook has a declining user base while Instagram is growing, and people are spending more time on Instagram. So impressions on Instagram are less expensive than they are on Facebook, which is particularly notable when you look at the Facebook stories, which are 100% more expensive placement than Instagram stories. So if you're trying to get the lowest possible CPM, I would potentially be avoiding Facebook stories, even though at Lebeg, we really are fans of automatic placements on ads, because the Facebook's algorithm usually is going to be very, very good at determining what the best possible and cheapest possible placement is for your ads to get a conversion over there. But what we are focusing more on this year, and we've seen work really well, is that tailoring content for platforms that have a lower CPM, like Instagram TV or even Facebook Messenger, can really have a big impact on the Shopify business and their conversions, just because the CPM, so the price of advertising, is so much lower while still maintaining a solid click-through rate in these platforms. So the conversion rates can still be pretty good there as well. So like I've mentioned, sorry, I'm probably getting in your way here. So let me just put myself up here. So we've divided the CPM by platform, and we've given you a breakdown here. So like we've mentioned, Facebook with around $12 to $13 of an average market CPM is going to be the most expensive platform that you can advertise on, while the Audience Network and Instagram are somewhere around $10 US. And on Facebook Messenger, you can expect a CPM of roughly half of that you can expect on Instagram and Audience Network. So around $5 US is going to be the CPM on this platform. So a good advice and a good thing to consider would be to tailor your content more towards Instagram and even Facebook Messenger as a placement. But if you break down, so this is what we were mentioning before. So if you look at the CPM on Facebook stories and the CPM on Instagram stories, you're going to notice that Instagram stories are roughly 50% less expensive than Facebook stories are. And this data and this presentation is going to be delivered into your email inboxes tomorrow. So once we're done with this webinar, you are going to be getting a recording and these slides as well. So you can go over that on your own, in your own time, and really devise your marketing strategies and your potential placements in the next couple of months so you can get the best possible results. And like I've mentioned as well, we did a breakdown of CPM per country, and without a surprise, the United States are the most expensive market, that you can advertise on, which is expected. The competition is the highest. The purchasing power is also the highest in the US. So your advertising efforts are going to cost you the most in the US. But if you're coming from a European market, you can see how the CPM is behaving in different European countries, but also how it's behaving in Australia and some other bigger markets that are potentially interested to you as a Shopify business. Now let's talk a bit about retargeting ads budget, because we've noticed this for a lot of businesses that are using our Shopify app has a really big impact on their CPMs, and they're making one big mistake that's definitely hurting their results as a whole. So a lot of the businesses we see are usually overspending on retargeting ads. And our kind of ideal budget split between prospecting and retargeting is some 85% of the budget being spent on prospecting campaigns, while around 15% should be spent on retargeting campaigns. And there's a very good reason for that, because if you're spending around 50-50, so 50% on prospecting and 50% on retargeting, you're not really expanding your retargeting audience. So you're not really advertising your product to cold audiences that then get acquainted with your brand, with your product. And then when you go to retarget to such a small audience with a fairly big budget, so if you're spending the same amount of money on retargeting as you are on prospecting, this is causing ad fatigue pretty quickly. And as your frequency on ads starts rising, Facebook starts to penalize you by raising your CPM. So you can usually see around 115% higher CPM on retargeting than it is on prospecting. But also what's happening is you're depleting your retargeting audiences. So if you're not replenishing them quickly enough by spending more money on prospecting ads, what you're going to do is you're going to come into this vicious cycle where your retargeting campaigns work exceptionally well for a very short time. As Facebook delivers your ads to a smaller audience and you get a lot of conversions, but once that runs dry, then you have to kind of pull back on your retargeting campaigns, invest more in prospecting, and then invest more in retargeting. And that's why we usually kind of prefer to have two evergreen campaigns, one on prospecting, one on retargeting. On prospecting, we're usually spending 85% of the budget, like I've mentioned, and on retargeting some 15%. And this tends to work pretty well for us, having a lower customer acquisition cost on retargeting than we do on prospecting. And the CPM never gets out of hand on the retargeting campaigns as well. So just to show you that this is backed by data, we've also done a breakdown of CPM of the whole last year. And this data contains over 500 Facebook ad accounts, like I've mentioned. So it is very statistically significant. And what we found is that on average, remarketing campaigns have a CPM of around $23, so almost 23 US dollars, while acquisition campaigns or prospecting campaigns, if you want to call them that, have a CPM of around 10 US dollars. The click-through rate usually is on average pretty much the same on prospecting and retargeting, but the conversion rate on retargeting campaigns is going to be higher than on your prospecting campaigns, simply because people are already acquainted with your brand. And one more thing that we would suggest to kind of lower your CPM as much as possible, but still get the best possible results, is to utilize broad targeting. And when I say broad targeting, what we like to do when a business is non-seasonal and it's not aimed strictly at men or women, it's not aimed at a particular age group, we like to go as broad as possible. So even targeting everyone in a particular country between the ages of 18 and 65, so not restricting Facebook in any significant way, which brings us the lowest possible CPM. But we also always optimize for purchases. So never optimize for anything else. If you're an e-commerce business, you always want to be optimizing for purchases. And that's what our data shows, that as of late 2019 performs the best. So around, just a bit of history, around 2010, interests were the best and basically the only strategy on Facebook ads that was performing well. And then around 2015, Facebook introduced lookalike audiences, which were an awesome tool around 2015, and it lasted for some 3 to 4 years. And lookalike audiences then were, again, the only thing that was working really well for e-commerce businesses. But as of late 2019, what we found is that just simply going broad and optimizing for the correct events and using the correct content, which is even more important, is going to be the thing that's working the best for a lot of e-commerce businesses. So on the accounts that we oversee and sometimes manage, we're using usually very broad targeting, but we're focusing mostly on content. And when I say content, I mean mostly copy. The creatives, what we like to do at LeBeg is we like to use single images because they have a CPM that's around 40% lower than it is on videos, while you can still have the same click-through rates on single images as you can on videos. You can have the same interaction rate with your ads by using single images if you get the copy right. And also to show you about lookalike audiences and broad targeting audiences, when talking about CPM, you're going to notice that all of the other variables are pretty much the same. The conversion rate is there somewhere. It is some 30% higher on lookalike audiences than it is on broad targeting. But on broad targeting, you have a CPM that's some 30% lower. The click-through rate is the same. So in total, your ROAS, and this is again, data that we ran for the whole of last year for all of the businesses that are using our Shopify app, The ROAS on average when using lookalikes was around 81%, but when using broad targeting, the ROAS was around 130%. So definitely, if you're not using broad targeting, if this is not a tactic that you've started to utilize, this would be one of my suggestions for you to try now in 2022, especially when the price of advertising is so low in the first quarter that you can really afford to test out the best content and the best strategies that you are going to be using in the rest of the year. So lookalikes versus broad, we would always recommend broad targeting. So just as I mentioned, lookalikes only have a 30% higher conversion rate, but they are 50% on average. They are 50% more expensive, and it simply doesn't justify the higher conversion rate, because you can get a higher ROAS when you are going broad, even with a lower conversion rate, because you are going for volume and not just for the highest possible conversion rate. So in total, for this CPM portion of our webinar, if you're not using the best practices, your CPM is going to be around can be even up to 150% higher compared to the expected value that we're seeing for businesses that are in e-commerce and then are on Shopify. So I would really be focusing on lowering the CPM as much as possible, because 150% higher CPM can lead to 150% higher CAC, which is something that no e-commerce business wants to see. You want to have the lowest possible CAC that you can when you are running your ads. And now for part two, I wanted to show you something that we've built a couple of months ago, and it's called an AI copywriter. So there's around 15, 16 of you in this webinar. And if you are a Shopify business, I'd like to use your store to show you how the AI copywriter is going to be working. So if you want, you just need to send me your URL in the chat, and I can show you on your example how your Facebook ads could look like by using the AI copywriter. And while you're typing up your store URLs, I'm going to tell you about the AI copywriter and why we've decided to build this feature into our app. And that's because we've noticed a lot of the small businesses that we're working with are struggling with writing good copy because they don't have access to a professional copywriter. So what our data science team did and what our developers did is that they developed an AI copywriter for Shopify stores that's focused on writing good converting copy based on OpenAI's GPT-3. And GPT-3 is the strongest language model in the market right now. And it was developed by Elon Musk. So this is the language model that we're using to write AI copy from scratch, only based on what you're seeing on your store and the description that you give it. So if someone can send me just the name of their store or the URL of their store in the chat, I'm going to be using you as an example. If not, I am going to be using a random Shopify store that I think of in the next 30 seconds. Okay, I see Alex and Adrian are both from SnoreStop. So let's try using that as a reference. So it's going to be snorestop.com. Okay, let's see what we have here. Okay, an anti-snoring brand since 1995. Cool. So let's see what kind of products we have here and what we could advertise. Let's go with the SnoreStop extinguisher. So for this feature, I'm going to go into our Advertising Insights app. It's actually called the LeBeg Marketing Consultant app. And I am going to go into the copy creation feature. So what I want to do is I want to be extremely creative with the ads. And I'm going to use this URL of the product. I'm going to add the name of the product. Okay. And a short description of the product. Okay, great. A lot of reviews here, and a description of the product should be here. So we should go with up to 200 characters. There's more than 200 here. So let's try just using this to see if it's going to fit. It is a bit too long, so let's just go with the first paragraph. All the rooms. Okay, cool. And all I have to do is just hit create copy suggestions and give the AI a bit of time to work with that. And I should be getting 4 copy suggestions that the AI is going to be giving me. These are all something that you need to manually review still before you actually put them in your ads. So they are AI generated, and sometimes they are going to turn out really good. And sometimes like this, I'm looking for a way, help me sleep better at night. So this can all be used either as inspiration, or you can use it as a final product if you like what you're seeing here. So let's see, 3 out of 4 created. Save your relationship, sleep tight, and snore less with the snore stop extinguisher. That's something I would like for this brand, especially combined with this image. So you can see the AI is actually scouring the whole website, finding as much data as it can about the product, and it's using this to create the best possible copy. I like this one, so I'm gonna like it. This here, again, something that I would like and potentially use if I was doing any advertising for this business. Great, let's create more ad suggestions. Let's see what else we can get here. So, still extremely creative. So you can do this as much as you want. And I like to get at least 8 to 12 possible suggestions for a business before I go in and manually change my copy and start using it in my ads. And it's really interesting to see what the AI turns out. When I'm doing ads for a particular business, I'm going to be completely honest, I'm very bad at writing copy. So I like to use this tool, which was basically created to help everyone work on their copy. And to me, this really saves a couple of hours of work when I am managing Facebook ad accounts and when I am looking to create new ads and try to find something that converts really, really well. Okay, happy home. There's a snoreless home. Okay, this one's funny. Cool. I'm gonna like this one. Nice. And we have more people joining us. So welcome everyone that's joined right now. You are going to be getting this webinar emailed to you as well. So it's going to be a recording, but also the slides that we're going over today, everything is going to be sent to your email addresses. So even though you've missed half of the webinar, you still are going to be able to watch it in your own time later on. Okay, Alex, Adrian from SnoreStop, thank you for sending over this website and participating in the webinar. I hope you actually find some of these suggestions useful and that you are going to be using them in your ads in a couple of weeks, I would say. Cool. So let's go back to the whole presentation. And like I've mentioned, the app is called LeBeg Marketing Consultant. If you are a Shopify business, it's available on the Shopify App Store. We do have a free trial of 2 weeks where you can install the app, give everything a try. You don't have to accept any billing or anything. And since you are participating in this webinar, if you do install the app and send me a quick email at tony@lebeg.io, I'd be happy to do a quick audit of your Facebook and Google ads setup to really see how you can boost your business and get the best possible ROI. So all you need to do is install the app, send me a quick email, and we can talk more about your whole setup and where we see the most opportunity for you to actually improve. And this leads us to our third part, which are going to be additional suggestions. And with additional suggestions, there's just a couple things I wanted to talk to you about because these are mistakes that we've seen businesses make pretty often. And the number one mistake we see businesses make is that they're using the link click optimization when they're an e-commerce business. So even though this is a strategy that you're sometimes going to find on the internet where you're going to see Facebook experts recommend, okay, on prospecting, you got to go with link clicks, and then on retargeting, just go with purchases as an optimization. Don't do that. So when you're using a link click optimization, that's the best possible way for you to waste your budget, because as an e-commerce business, you don't want people to click on your link, visit your website, and bounce. And bounce rate is around 80%. When we see people using the link click optimization, the bounce rate is super high here. So we always recommend actually optimizing for purchases, even in the prospecting campaigns. And this is very, very important to do, because when you're optimizing for purchases in the prospecting campaigns, you know that you're getting an audience that has an actual chance of converting on your website. So they've been optimized for a purchase once in the prospecting campaign. Even if they don't convert, when you are retargeting them, you're retargeting people who at least have some chance of purchasing from your store. While on the other hand, if you're just optimizing for link clicks, you're not going to be getting people that have any sort of chance of actually purchasing from your store. And this is just going to be a wasted budget. You're never going to see good results. And it's basically by accident that you're going to see some people potentially purchase from your store in that case. The number 2 advice that we have is to use the best possible copy. So separate from the AI copywriter that I showed you on this presentation, what we did at Lebeg, our data science team ran an ad copy analysis on over 400 different ad accounts. And what we did is we broke down the ad copy based on campaign. So whether or not it's a prospecting campaign or a retargeting campaign, and we broke the ads down in several different features. So to show you what I'm talking about is in prospecting campaigns, what we found is when we broke down the copy features, so whether or not a particular ad copy is mentioning promotions, price, free shipping info, any sort of urgency, emoji, and social proof, what we found is that using free shipping info, price, and promotions on prospecting campaigns is going to increase the ROAS of a campaign. But if you're using urgency and if you're using social proof in prospecting campaigns, what this is going to do is it's actually going to hurt your ROAS. And when you think about it, it's actually going to make sense. So prospecting audience should be a cold audience that doesn't know about your brand. They've never been on your website. So what's the point of you urging them to buy right now? So they don't know about your brand. They don't trust you. They don't know anything about you. If you tell them buy now in the next 10 minutes, buy in the next day, it's probably not going to have them convert any better than they would with you just mentioning the whole price of the product. The same thing with the social proof. You can't be mentioning reviews if people don't know what you're actually talking about. While on retargeting campaigns, the opposite really works. So emojis still work well, price still works well, but using urgency and using social proof on retargeting campaigns is going to increase your ROAS. So there's a time and place to use urgency and social proof in ad copy and in your ads, and that time and place is not prospecting campaigns. So in prospecting campaigns, hold off on using any sort of sense of urgency or social proof in campaigns, but use that in your retargeting ads. So that's why it's very important to kind of have 2 different campaigns and 2 different targetings, one prospecting, one retargeting, dividing your budget 85% on prospecting, 15% on retargeting, and that's going to lead to the best possible ROAS that you can see for your stores. And just one final, actually not the final thing, but advice number 3 is to keep track of your competitors. So you want to know what your competition is doing because it can affect your store in several different ways. So that's why we also have a competitors analysis feature in the Lebeg app as well, where we're allowing businesses to track up to 3 competitors and what they're doing on Facebook ads, what they're doing on Google ads, and how often they're releasing new Facebook ads. So your competition should be the first person that you're looking at to see what they're doing on their ads, how often they're launching new ads, and whether or not your CPMs are affected by them potentially launching a big new campaign. Because we've seen this happen for a lot of businesses. Your CPMs suddenly go up, you have no idea why it's happening, you haven't done anything wrong, your performance is still pretty solid, but not great. And then you notice, okay, my competitor just launched a big new campaign. They're probably spending a lot of money, so the competition on the market is getting stronger right now. My CPMs are hurting. Let's see what they're doing, and maybe I can mimic something either in terms of offer or in terms of creatives to really compete better with them. So we've put all of that into our app as well, and we're giving you an opportunity to track what your competition is doing, how fast they're growing, what they're doing on Facebook ads, so you can really get up to speed and potentially get some inspiration from them as well. Because for Italic right now, I see that they're using 5-star emojis in the ad copy. And I know that this works well, both on prospecting and retargeting. If I'm not using it, I should probably be copying something similar to this in my ad strategies as well. And to tell you about one major mistake that we're seeing businesses make, and that's mislead reporting. And this has really been very, very important in the last week. I don't know how many of you participating in this webinar are currently working on Facebook ads. And if you've seen a lot of conversions happen recently since last Thursday, but what we've seen on some accounts is that the number of Facebook purchases has been higher than the number of total Shopify orders. And this really can't be happening. And we've heard a lot of chatter about businesses being very happy with their performance in the last week. But what happened is that Facebook had a deduplication bug between their conversions API and the Facebook pixel tracking. And we've seen a lot of businesses in our system have actually had worse overall performance. So they've seen fewer Shopify orders in their Shopify stores, but they've seen double or even triple the number of conversions for their Facebook purchases. So this is something that can be easily caught by using our app in the business report, where we are giving you really a breakdown of all the most important metrics of your Shopify stores. And this is something that we caught on day one. We kind of scrambled around a bit to find out what's happening here and what's causing this. And finally, with Facebook support, we were able to figure out that it's a deduplication issue where Facebook is basically telling you, okay, you're getting 500 purchases, but in reality, you're getting 250 or even less purchases. So something that you want to always kind of keep an eye on, how your Facebook purchases are affecting your total Shopify orders. Because if you see good Facebook data, but your store is hurting, something is up, and you shouldn't only be focusing on what Facebook is telling you, especially after April of 2021, where we all know that iOS 14 came in and really messed up Facebook's tracking abilities. So you can no longer be completely sure which purchase came from Facebook, which didn't, and how your actual ROAS is looking like. So always focus on total store metrics and new Shopify orders that you're getting, and not only on what Facebook is telling you, and trust them blindly, because in a lot of the cases, Facebook can mess up like they did last week, and we're still seeing businesses seeing double the number of purchases in their stores, which are simply not happening. And that would be it for today. I told you I'm going to keep it short and sweet. So thank you all for joining us on this webinar. I am open for questions now. So if you have any questions, you can send them into our chat here on the webinar. I am going to be sticking around for a couple of more minutes. So send your questions to the chat, or you can send your questions to info@lebeg.io as well. Okay, Adrian has a question. So if CPM is different on Facebook and Instagram, should I limit ad delivery only to the cheaper platform? And I've mentioned this during the presentation. We don't prefer to do that. So we usually like to have an automatic placement for all of our ads. And we do kind of vary our creatives based on Facebook and Instagram to really match the aspect ratios that you need to have. But when you're using automatic placements, usually your CPM can be lower than when you're using manual placements. What I like to do is I like to put an ad on automatic placements for a week to see what my overall CPM is. But then if I notice that my CPM is much, much lower on Instagram versus Facebook, which sometimes simply happens, I like to also create a separate ad set that's only going to be delivering to Instagram and not Facebook, to see if I can keep that lower CPM that I'm getting on Instagram if my conversion rate is still good. So I want to kind of be hyper focused on good performance, and that's why I only trust the numbers, but I like to test out everything. But to start off, Adrian, I would say go with broad targeting and automatic placements. That's going to deliver the best possible CPM and the best possible results that you can see. And then if you notice a certain platform is performing much better than the others, then try testing out a separate ad set only targeting that platform in the future. You're welcome. If anyone has any other questions, now is the time to ask while we have me here. No, So the question is, does the copywriter work only for specific industries? The answer is no. No matter which industry you are in, no matter what your product is, all we need to create good converting copy for you is a description of your product and the website URL. Everything else is going to be done by the AI itself. So it is going to go on your website, scan it all, see what the most important information is about the product, see what would be good converting based on the practices and algorithms that we've built into it. And you are going to be shown a good ad copy that you can potentially start using on your ads straight away. But a very good question. Yeah, so it's not industry specific. It works for all different industries and all different products. No more, still valid. Okay, Ante. Does the rule no more than 20% of text on the visual still valid? Does it impact ROI and CPM? Actually, yes. It is still valid, and we did an analysis, so I'm not sure about the exact data, but if you send an email to info@lebeg.io, I can contact my data science team and get that for you exactly. But what we were doing is we were doing an analysis of different visuals and seeing how much text is in them. So what portion of the visual the text is covering, and what the ROAS is dependent on the percentage of the image being covered by text. So it's a very good question. We did the exact analysis. I think that this is still valid, but I need to check with my data science team. So if you can just send a quick email to info@lebeg.io, I'll get that for you tomorrow during the day probably as well. So thanks, Ante. Mike, what to optimize for if you're not an e-commerce website? That's a very good question. But if you're not an e-commerce website, always optimize for the end goal that you have. And we've done some work for brands that are not e-commerce, so that are not really selling anything, but they are looking for very specific signups and generating leads mostly. I would say don't use the lead generation forms on Facebook, because on those you're going to get very cheap but very, very bad results. So they're going to be very low quality leads, whatever you do, whatever kind of targeting that you do, just don't use the lead generation forms on Facebook at all. Create a separate landing page for these leads and create a custom event for the lead generation sign up, and always optimize for that. So you are going to have to go a bit more narrow than just by going broad, like we recommend to e-commerce websites. But you can still get good results if you just narrow down the targeting a bit. Optimize for the event on your website. So your website should be sending that, preferably server to server, so using the Conversions API. See the quality of the leads that you're getting in the first couple of days. See the cost per lead that you're getting. And if you are getting good quality leads, continue with that, optimize budgets a bit or even increase the budgets. But if it's not a good quality of the leads that you are getting, I would even be building a longer funnel, making it harder for people to subscribe, to kind of get a good quality lead that's interested in my service, and still only optimizing for the end event. So you want to teach Facebook what a good quality lead is for you, and use that as a reference point to optimize for you as well. And Uvive, this may be a bit off topic. How would you advise someone goes about doing a Facebook ad account audit? Well, it all depends. So if you're an e-commerce business, like I've mentioned, since you are participating in this webinar, I can do an ad account audit for you. Once you install the app and connect your Facebook and Google ad accounts, we can go over your creatives and we can go over your performance. But we at Lebeg are doing a lot of advertising account audits for our customers. And how we usually focus on creating this audit is we're comparing you with the rest of the market. So this is something that's built into our app, but what we're doing is we're looking at the main metrics that you are having. So your CPM, your click-through rate, and your conversion rate, and seeing how far off the benchmarks and how far off the market you are. And once we kind of find the biggest culprit for your potentially bad performance, this is what we're going to be focusing on in the rest of the audit as well. So if we see that CPM is a problem for you, the first thing that we're going to be looking at is how are you doing your targeting? Are you doing a lot of manual placements? Are you going really, really narrow? So on audiences that are a couple of 100,000 in size instead of a couple of million in size. Whether or not your frequency is really high. So if you're being penalized by Facebook for that. So that's going to be our approach. And then once we're kind of done with that and see what the main culprit is potentially, then we're going to be moving into looking at your creative. So what's the best performing creative in your ad account in the last couple of months, and how you're using it. Are you actually testing enough content? Are you testing enough copy? Are you testing enough different visual content to really be in front of your customers? So that's how we like to structure the ad account audits, and that's what we like to do and how we like to approach that. But there are a lot of different variables to look at. So there's not really a lot more that I can tell you right now than just try installing the app. It does, like I mentioned, it does have a free trial, and we can go over everything in your setup then and really see how you can get better results. Really hope that one helps. Yeah, Ante. So a question from Ante. You said that Facebook needs about 30 conversions to learn to have good results, but is there any time limit for that, like a week or so? Yeah, so Facebook is going to be exiting the learning phase if you get 30 conversions in a couple of days. Sometimes I've seen it be around 4 days. Sometimes I've seen it be around 7 days, but it's never longer than 7 days that you need those 30 conversions in. But there's also one good thing, and Ante, once you reach in an email, I'm going to send you a link to our blog post as well. We did a bit of research on the learning phase versus not in the learning phase. And what we found is that even when ads get stuck in the learning limited phase, they can still have good performance, but it is slightly more erratic than it is when ads exit the learning phase successfully. So there's this learning phase myth that's happening on Facebook right now, where Facebook is really forcing you to put as much budget as you can to get those 30 to 50 conversions, where the ad then leaves the learning phase and goes into delivering or active, and it's not in learning limited, but the results are not that much better to justify kind of the higher ad spend that you would need to potentially have to get out of the learning phase. And this is really backed by data. So we were looking at a couple $100,000 of ad spend on several different ad accounts that really showed us that the customer acquisition cost can even be worse after exiting the learning phase versus when the ad is still in the learning phase or in the learning limited phase as well. But to answer your question, yes, there is a time. It's between 4 and 7 days, depending on the Facebook algorithms at that single point in time and your ad account as well. There is still hope, Ante. There is still hope. Don't worry. Great. If you have any other questions, I'm still open for questions. Okay. And Robert, Robert says, which is the best tool for Facebook advertising reporting? Right now, my team uses Report Garden together for Google and Facebook advertising. Robert, I am a bit biased, but I would say it's the Lebeg Marketing Consultant app. So we've been in the advertising business for over 5 years now, and we've tried all the possible tools that there are out there, but we haven't really found anything that's satisfactory for us, that's going to give us Shopify data, that's going to give us Facebook data, Google data, and competitor data in one place. So what we decided to do some 2 years ago, we decided to build the Lebeg Marketing Consultant app. And initially we built it for ourselves to really be able to report better to our clients. But then we figured out, okay, there's a lot of businesses making the same mistakes, and there's a lot of Shopify e-commerce businesses that need this. And we've developed the app to really give you all of the data in one place without having to upgrade your Shopify plan, to actually be able to see who's a new order, who's not a new order, without going into the Google Tag Manager, without scouring Google Analytics and breaking everything down. We give you the most important e-commerce metrics that you need all in one place so you can see everything in the LeBeg app. Like I said, I am biased. I've tried other tools. We've tried them a couple of years ago and we simply decided, okay, this is not working for us. We need to build something that we as a team can use and something that our customers are going to be able to use to see their results at a glance every single day. Just log in, see if everything's working well. If it is, don't touch it. If it's not, it makes it really easy to dig into your data and see where you're going wrong and what the kind of culprit for bad performance potentially is. So if you are on Shopify, Robert, I'd suggest just give the app a try. You can always send me an email if you need any additional kind of steps or guidance through it to see if it's going to be better for your team than Report Garden potentially. Yeah, no problem. Happy to help. Hope to see you in the app and hope to talk to you on a separate call as well, Robert. Okay, awesome. I think we've covered all the questions for now. I really hope that you all enjoyed our webinar, and I'd like to thank you again for coming in, for taking the time to listen to me. Like I've mentioned, we are going to be sending this all over email tomorrow during the day as well. So you're going to have the webinar slides, and you are going to have all of the whole recording, so you can revisit that and see the questions that we've talked about. And until our next webinar, thank you for coming. Hope you have a great month, and I hope you all have great Facebook advertising results in the coming months. So good luck to everyone, and thank you again. Bye.